Hello marketer, it's Ty here with another episode of Lean Mean Marketing Teams. What do you get when you cross a marketing leader with a passion for marketing, marketplaces, fashion and FinTech? The answer is Malini Sietaram, Chief Revenue Officer and CMO at Brighte. Malini has an incredible background that traverses the globe and advances from CMO for a hip-hop brand to working her way up the ladder at eBay through to other CMO roles for marketplaces such as Finder and Brighte. If you haven't heard of Brighte yet, spelled Bright with an E on the end, then you'll want to stick around to learn more about what Malini calls Australia's best kept secret. This is a company led by a phenomenal female FinTech leader, CEO and founder Katherine McConnell, and it has a star-studded board and investment panel, including the Atlassian co-founders. And it's on a hockey stick growth path, just like a tech startup straight out of Silicon Valley, with 8,000% growth. Yes, 8,000. In this episode, Malini breaks down how she has grown her team from 2 to 22, including which role she hired first and why. She explains how Katherine, the CEO, is creating a one-of-a-kind culture at Brighte by hiring nice people that want to work together and who share the same values. Diversity is a big topic that we dive into. Brighte recently won a diversity award at the Finnies, the Australian FinTech Awards, and Malini describes just how diverse Brighte is and shares some remarkable stories of how this enhances creativity and customer centricity. Another big topic is the importance of alignment between different marketing teams, especially sales and marketing. Malini reveals how they use OKRs at Brighte to keep the whole company incentivized to collaborate. And we also dig into growth marketing in a bit of detail. You'll find out why it's not the dark arts dirty word, but is an essential capability for any marketing team. Malini's got deep experience in growth marketing. She's been in it for over 15 years and she really breaks down what it is and what it isn't and why it's important. I love the chance to interview CMOs from a wide range of company sizes and backgrounds and industries, and I think this episode is packed with gems that you'll love. It also has some great sayings such as call the ball and park your ego. Please let me know what you think of the episode. You can email me at ty@growthgenerators.io or leave a review on Apple iTunes. I'd love to hear your feedback.
Welcome to Lean Mean Marketing Teams with Ty Hayes, where you'll hear from leading CMOs and thought leaders about what it takes to create a high-performance marketing team. This podcast is brought to you by Growth Generators, a consulting firm that helps CMOs design and build modern marketing teams that drive growth. If you need help optimizing your marketing team, head to growthgenerators.io. Now, let's get on to the show.
Welcome Malini Sietaram, Chief Revenue Officer and CMO at Brighte, to the Lean Mean Marketing Teams podcast.
Thank you, Ty. I'm happy to be here, and my compliments on pronouncing my name correctly. That doesn't happen a lot.
Thank you. A little bit of practice. Now, we briefly met at the CMO 50 event back in 2019, and I'm glad we stayed in touch because you've got a fascinating background that kind of blends marketing, marketplaces, fashion and FinTech. So I'm excited to see how the conversation unfolds today. Now, why don't we start there with your career? You've worked in multiple continents and you've worked for some big tech companies. Why don't you take us back to where your passion for marketing started and give us a bit of a brief overview of your career today?
So my passion for marketing actually didn't start with marketing. It started with customer service. So my parents owned this Caribbean bar in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and I basically learned to walk holding myself, which is not very safe, but holding myself to bottles and learning to walk. So I've always wanted to have a bar. I always wanted to be in hospitality industry. So I started working for Hilton, traveled the world, and then I decided at one point, I don't want my feet to hurt every day. And having Indian tiger parents, they're like, go back to uni, get an MBA, get more degrees.
Yeah, study harder.
Study hard, become one engine doctor, but still not a doctor. Went back, got my MBA, and that's where my love for marketing started, because it's all about the customer, and you can be creative, and you can be analytical. So I was like, well, and your feet don't hurt. You wear high heels, and your feet don't hurt, which is a perk. So that's where I started, and then I was quickly promoted to become the global marketing head for this hip hop fashion industry conglomerate. So I worked with all these gangster rappers as a 25-year-old, totally over promoted, but had so much fun. And I can tell you lots of stories about it, but I don't think they're appropriate for this podcast. And after that, I moved to eBay. So a total switch from being in gangster rap world to corporate America. And within eBay, I worked in so many functions in marketing. Started in Amsterdam, moved to Silicon Valley, lived in San Francisco for a long time, then moved to Italy and basically traveled the world because I had a global team there in the end, running content and social media and making that a profitable revenue stream. And after that, my husband, who's Australian, forced me to move to Australia. Starting to like it now. I know. I think from all the places to be, it's probably best to be here and not in San Francisco or Amsterdam. Moved here, and then I worked in startups. So I had a few startups, and now I've landed in a really warm bath called Bright. I'm really happy.
Yeah, oh, beautiful. A little bit of a overlap there. My parents owned not a bar, but they owned a liquor store, and also worked in there, and helped with stock take, and eventually worked in there where I could. And I think either retail or hospitality is a good grounding because you really get to learn what customer service is, especially when it's a family-owned kind of business. So some similarity there. Now at Bright, so really interesting company doing some really interesting things, spelled Bright with an E on the end. Why don't you tell us a bit about Bright for the audience's benefit?
I think Bright is Australia's best kept secret. Like before I started working here, I've never heard of it. And basically what we do is we offer a 0% interest payment plans to customers who want to invest in clean energy or in home improvements. And what's great for us is that we work really closely with the tradie. So if you're a tradie and you want to install solar and your customer doesn't have $10,000 at hand, or they don't want to use their savings or their credit card, they can use us. And we pay the tradie immediately. So they don't have to worry about following up on invoices, and they can focus on their trade. So we're solving both things. And our goal is to make sure that people love the homes they live in today, which especially during COVID is super important.
Yeah. It's a fascinating little business and business model. So I assume you take some fees in terms of weekly fees or some way to recoup that revenue?
Yes. So it's mostly a merchant fee, so a vendor fee. And we don't charge interest. Then we charge a $1 weekly account keeping fee. So it's very economical for customers.
Sounds really good. And I guess especially in Australia with such rich natural resources, it's fantastic that companies are kind of leading the way and making this a lot more accessible for Australians. So go Bright. I see you work for your CEO, Katherine McConnell, is winner of the Female FinTech Leader of the Year and finalist in the 2020 National Women in Digital Awards. What's it like to work for someone as well renowned as Katherine?
She's a powerhouse. She's so dynamic. And what a lot of people don't know is that she's a mom of 2 kids. So I don't know how she does it. I still think that she has a clone somewhere. She's raising these 2 beautiful boys together with her husband and running this company. And she still has the time to make us these fabulous cheese platters. And it's a really interesting business model. So she wanted to install solar panels on her house and thought the finance options were really difficult. And that combined with her 15 years of experience at Macquarie made her decide to start this company from scratch. And she's done an amazing job. In the last 3 years, we've grown 8,891%, which is not the calculation I did. It was Deloitte, so it's true. She just has this thirst for knowledge, and she just learns on the fly. But the thing that inspires me most about her is that she's one of the good people. She's incredibly humble. She makes fabulous cheese plates. Cares about the customer. And I've worked in Silicon Valley for a long time where we basically celebrate, sorry to say this, these eccentric jerks. I'm personally invested in her success because I want someone that's humble and kind and to win. It's just an inspiration to work for her.
Brilliant. Yeah, that humility and authenticity goes a long way, doesn't it? In terms of building trust and someone you really want to work for. And you also have a phenomenal board and amazing investors, so including some of the Atlassian co-founders, Mike Cannon-Brookes, Scott Farquhar. Hopefully I didn't mess his name up too badly there. But do you get access to this board and these investors? And if so, what's it been like to interact with these tech superstars?
It's fantastic. It's an incredible board. We also have great investors from Airtree and from Polgrow. And we have access to the board quite a lot. So I talk to the board at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. And it's really good. They keep you honest because you cannot bluff your way through this board. They keep you on your toes because they ask you really difficult questions. But the thing I really appreciate about the board is that they're also really kind. So I took over the sales team during COVID. And it was, and I know this is the most overused word in 2020, but it was unprecedented challenges. And I didn't know how to deal with it. So at one point to the board, I said, listen, I am tapping out. I don't know how to solve this problem. And instead of scolding me, they sat down and they're like, okay, well, let's fix it together. We'll figure it out. And that's a really a nice, safe environment. And that's the environment we thrive in. So I'm really grateful for the board.
Wow, sounds really supportive and amazing. Perhaps if we go back to that growth rate, so that 8,000%, that sounds phenomenal. What does that look like in terms of either loans given out or the size of the team?
Oh, it's grown tremendously, even during COVID. So we currently have 85 people. I think the team started 3 years ago with about 5 people. So it's grown tremendously. We have a loan book over $500 million. Which is not something you expect because we're still this really small company, or we feel like we're small, we're just starting. It's been tremendous growth.
Yeah, brilliant. And I noticed your role title changed a little bit. So it was CMO and you've changed to Chief Revenue Officer and Marketing Officer 8 months ago. Did that signify a change in your remit?
It did. I broadened my remit. We decided to move sales under my leadership. And in the interim, I also manage product, which was quite nice. And it's been an amazing journey because one thing it does, and you probably notice in your experience, there's a lot of, in good companies, healthy, and in some other companies, toxic tension between sales and marketing. Putting them together means that we're focusing on a challenge, and we can see where marketing takes the lead and where sales takes the lead. And you have one person at the top that makes the decision and looks at both things. So you don't have department heads fighting with each other and like, well, who needs resources? It's worked out tremendously well.
Yeah, I can imagine it is an ongoing kind of perennial tension, but when you get it right, it can be so powerful because they both have different strengths and skills and roles to play. But it is about identifying that clear accountability as well as the overlap and, you know, when they pass the baton and who does what, and getting really clear on that accountability and the roles they each play. So you've got sales and marketing, you had product for a little while. Let's get into your actual marketing team. So kind of how many in the marketing team and what other functions do you have in there?
Yeah. So when I started, I had 2.5 people in marketing, which was shocking in the beginning. I was like, oh, it's just a team. Good. And now we have 22 people. So it's grown a lot. And in the marketing team, we have a brand division. So I just hired a head of brand and consumer marketing. We have our PR division. We have design, research, and insights. And then we have the marketing team, which is split up between growth and retention.
Wow. So a huge change from 2 to 22. How did you work out which roles to hire first and actually come up with this structure that you needed?
So I think the first thing that's really important is to understand the business strategy. I think a good marketing team is in support of the business strategy. So how do you translate that? And how do you make sure that you have a big impact in the growth of the company? So that's the first thing. And then I have a first principle, and I've done this now every single time I build a team, is to hire an analyst first. Because you need someone that can set up the frameworks, can set up the tracking and tell us the truth. And also someone that keeps me honest. So that was my very first hire. I hired this amazing person who's a PhD and he's way too smart. And I only understand half of the things he says. And then I looked at the business needs. So then we hired the people that we needed to hire, which was very much in growth marketing, which we hadn't done before, and then in brand and consumer marketing. So that's, and I'm still hiring. So I'm currently hiring, shameless plug, I'm hiring a head of growth marketing. So if anyone is listening, please shout out.
Sounds like a good role. There's not too many of them in Australia and a good tech company. So if it's still available when this podcast comes out, have a look at that. And for the audience's benefit, you have differing levels of understanding of growth marketing, growth hacking, and some may see it as, some black magic in terms of what the tech companies do and take hacking as a dirty word, whereas others, I guess, that know a bit more about it, see it as this data-driven experimental approach to kind of drive unprecedented, to use that word again, but viral growth that you couldn't get otherwise. But is that how you describe it, or what? What's your definition of growth marketing, and what does that function look like at Brighte?
I think growth marketing comes down to being very much aligned to the business strategy and then figuring out how you can drive growth and serve your customers. So for us, it's very much focused around acquisition and activation. And within that, there's a lot of experimentation. So first, it's making sure that we're aligned with the business strategy, Then the second step is to understand your customer needs. And then the third step is to have a really proper measurement framework. And I believe you can measure anything. It can be a learning agenda, you can have hypothesis. Even if it fails, you've learned something. And my mom used to call that the tuition of life. So it's very much about experimentation and figuring out what you can do to move the needle and how you can move quickly.
Great definition of growth marketing. To illustrate it even further for the audience, can you give an example of an experiment you ran for either acquisition or activation and kind of how that aligned to the business strategy, how you got the insights from the data and then ran an experiment, the results that you got?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of my favorite initiatives was one around automation and MarTech.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started, I thought our onboarding process for our vendors was highly manual. And I thought it wasn't set up for scale. It's like, oh, if this becomes 10x, it's going to break. We'll have to hire dozens and dozens of BDMs to make this work. So I tasked the marketing team. I said, come up with a way to automate this solution without losing the customer and still delighting them. And they came up with this beautiful automated solution to onboard our vendors. And in the result, it was we could onboard them within seconds. The engagement went up and they actually wrote more. And it meant we started to create this lean machine. And it was the first initiative that I launched at Brighte. It empowered the team and empowered the marketing team to show how they could move the needle. And it set us up for success with marketing technology as well.
Brilliant. Great example. And I imagine the, principles of growth marketing and that experimentation is perhaps something spread across the team, but what other skill sets do you have within the growth marketing team specifically? And then we'll dig into how the rest of the team collaborates and works together.
It's still a small team, but we have people in there that have some SEO expertise. We have people in there that have done it in the past. I have a person in my team who scaled Spaceship from 0 customers to 40,000. As employee number 3. So she's doing the same for us and she's doing a great job in it. And then it's very much about digital marketing and looking at customer problems and figuring out how to solve it. And in full transparency, we don't have all the skill sets in-house. So one thing I do is I use my little black book with my friends. They've helped us. So I got some really great SEO experts in from my previous life who trained up the team, and then we experimented with that, and then we saw exponential growth through that. So it's been a fun ride.
Fantastic. And on that capability development then, so obviously you've hired in new staff and you've tapped into these external networks where you can. What are some of those key core capabilities that you've been building over the past 18 months within the team?
Well, one is, and I don't know if this is a core capability, but one thing I find really important is tenacity. This is a new product. It's a very complex product. It's a very different target audience. So you need to have that grit to figure it out. And you need to be fearless. And it's okay to fail because we need to figure it out. So I think that's almost a core capability in getting that tenacity.
Yeah. And have you done any training around that, or is it just through on-the-job learning, or how have you built that into the culture with the team?
We've done a few things. So one thing I did is I developed this playbook with 15 questions that the team needs to ask whenever they create something. And these 15 questions kind of guide you into what is a great initiative and will this actually work? So these are devil advocate questions you ask yourself to build something that's great. And the other thing, and this is a work in progress, is creating a safe culture. This culture where people feel comfortable in, and I always like to put this in quotations, but comfortable to fail, or comfortable to ask for help, or comfortable to say, I have this really cool idea. I don't know if it's going to work. This is how I'm going to measure it. And can I do it? So I think it's about, if you create a culture where people feel safe to experiment, I think that's the culture for growth.
Wow, there's been a lot covered in this interview so far. As a marketing leader, we know you like to spend more time taking action and less time taking notes. So we've got you covered. We packaged up all the tips, strategies, and resources from each episode into some beautifully crafted notes just for you. Not ugly AI-generated transcripts, but real notes taken by a real person on our team. To grab the notes, head on over to growthgenerators.io, look out for this podcast episode and download the notes. But be quick, they're only live for a few weeks after the episode airs. Now, back to the show.
I've seen you've done hack days and things like that. Is that part of building that culture? How important are those days to give that space and time to people to come together and dream big and experiment?
Oh, it's essential. The day-to-day can be exhausting. There's so much to do, and especially in a startup, we don't have like eBay 30,000 people who can do it. We have a lot of work to do, and we want to keep this hyper growth. So sometimes it's good where you can have a day or two where you can actually think solving complex problems. If everyone could solve it like that, it wouldn't be a problem. So you need to have that time. You need to have a fun environment where you can experiment.
And now coming back to this sales and marketing challenge of how to get them working together, how did you crack the nut on getting sales and marketing to work really closely together? And then what else are you doing to foster that collaboration amongst the whole team?
I think it all comes down to goal alignment. If everyone's goal is aligned and everyone's nose is pointing the same way, you incentivize collaboration. So collaboration does come from the top in setting the right goals. And then the other thing I find really important is what I call park your ego. We are here to serve our customers. We're here to build an amazing Australian success story. And we need to park our egos sometimes. And we all have egos, myself included. As a CMO, probably the biggest ego of all of them. But we need to park it and have that culture where we're happy to work with people. And I also think it's about hiring, and it comes down to what Katherine shows by example is we hire nice people. We hire good professional people who like to work with other people, who like to share their knowledge. And that creates this culture of inclusion and collaboration, and it makes it a lot easier to get to that culture.
I think the goal alignment's so important, especially between the marketing department and the company's goals, and that's some of the work I do with companies as well, is getting that clear alignment. I imagine you're from a tech background, so is OKRs the main kind of way that you get that alignment between the two? Yeah.
Yes, it is. I'm a cliche, but OKRs work.
Yeah. And I mean, is there an example, without giving away any inside information, but a simple example you can share for the audience to bring that to life a little bit, like what one outcome may be for the marketing team and a couple of key results and some initiatives related to that?
Yeah, I think one is, and that's probably very similar to every other company, is we want to acquire X amount of customers. And that's our goal. And that goal is part sales, because we get most of our customers through our vendors, and part marketing. And then it comes down to chopping that up. So we have this overall key result that's across the entire company. So the tech team thinks of things they can do to acquire customers. The marketing thinks about that. And then what we do as a senior leadership, we come together and we look at all these initiatives and we prioritize them. And we also have, and this is what I think is really exciting, and the way that I think OKRs work is that we have the team vote for the initiatives. So it's not just someone that's going rogue. We have other people. So we choose by popular demand. And that, again, creates that collaboration. So then when we start the OKR process, everyone is trying to get to the same North Star.
Yeah, fantastic. And you can see how giving staff some buy-in and weigh into that decision is so critical to have them buy in and work together on that. And I think what you're saying around the hiring the nice people, I imagine, do the values play quite a strong role? Like, does Brighte have really clear values, and do you really attract a tribe, a certain kind of person that works there?
Yeah. Well, one of our values is be human. We kept it vague because we don't want to say be authentic, because we hope everyone is authentic. And you could be an authentic jerk. So it's more about be human. And that means be empathetic to your colleagues, be empathetic to your customer. And then the other value we have, which I like, is call the ball. And it comes from footy, which I've learned because I don't play footy. And it's very much about ownership. Like, no, I have the ball. I'm going to run with it. Ooh, I'm going to drop the ball. I'm going to give you the ball. Do you have the ball? We have meetings where we say, do you have the ball on this? I'm calling the ball. And that makes it really clear on like where the ability is. And it makes people run.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. It's a visual way to, put a RASI model in place and have that real clear accountability. Who has got the ball in this stage of the project or process? So there's no confusion. Now, still keeping on team, I saw your team won a diversity award at the FinTech Australia event recently, the Finnies. So what does Brighte do differently to encourage diversity?
I think we're organically a highly diverse company. I didn't look at the stats, but I think we're one of the few tech companies that has an 80% female C-suite. And what it comes down to is representation matters. I'm a woman of color, and one of the reasons I really excelled in my career is because I worked at a company where there were people who looked like me, and I could kind of say, oh, well, I have no excuse. They got there. So if I work hard enough, I can get there. And it's broader than that. Katherine is a mom of two boys, and sometimes she needs to leave early to pick them up, have dinner on the table, and it gives the freedom to the rest of the team, moms and dads, to leave early when they need to. And I think what's really exciting is it's not just for the women in our office. We have a lot of dads in the office who have little girls, and they're really proud to see that and see like, oh, my little girl can get there and become a CEO or whatever they want to be, or a head of engineering. I think the representation is really important. And it's more than just gender or race. It's also in age. Very often in tech companies, it's a very young culture. And for example, in my team, I have people that are in their mid-50s and I have people that are in their early 20s. And having those different life experiences and celebrating that and learning from each other, that really creates that diverse culture. And it makes me incredibly proud to work here.
Yeah. Sounds amazing and quite unique, to have such a diversity across so many dimensions. And I'm sure it's been one of the secrets to the success there, right? That diversity in thinking, in cultures, in collaboration, in understanding. Are there any other ways that it's harnessed at Brighte?
It helps with our customer centricity. We put the customer first. We have a very diverse customer base. And a great example I can give, which happened a couple of weeks ago, is a customer called our CS department and didn't speak English and was from Vietnam. And instead of hanging up, someone ran across the hall and got one of the engineers who's from Vietnam, and he solved the problem. And thank God it was a tech problem, so you could immediately solve it, but it was a win-win. It matters because if you have this diverse group of people, you can serve your diverse group of customers best. And there's not this uniform mentality of, I think this will work because that's what happens in my world. Creates creativity. I think diversity, it's not just a marker you put on a balanced scorecard for your board. Diversity equals creativity.
And especially with all the other attributes you've got going, like you've talked about that customer centricity, about no egos, about experimentation, permission to fail or to try new things. You put that culture together with a diverse group of people, and they're given permission and inspiration, I guess, with the leadership that is so inspirational as well, to try new things, to fail, and to have a life as well, with the work-life balance, which isn't always there with a startup. So it sounds like a lot of good things going on at Brighte, I'm sure, has contributed to a lot of success that you've already had. You mentioned bringing in some of your SEO contacts that you had in your little black book. Just to pick up on that again, I noticed that when you're at Finder, you actually sent your digital team over to Silicon Valley. So this using of externals or mentors seems to be a theme. And is that how you think about the development of the team? You think about, well, what skills have we got in-house and how can we train each other with the skills we've got in-house? What other maybe, training do we need to buy in? And then what's the external network that we need to tap into? Do you have an actual capability framework or a way you go about development, or is it just that mix of structured and organic?
I wish I had a really beautiful framework, but I'm going to be honest, it's very much on the fly, talking to my team and figuring out what we need. And sometimes it comes out of frustration. Like, I've seen this done really well. And then just calling people, like, it's really important. And I wish I could fly my team to Silicon Valley. Don't think that's going to happen for maybe a year. But we also have remarkable talent in Australia, and we have a tremendous board. But also on the flip side, I think my team at one point will be ready where people will call me and say, like, can we please come your team? Like, buy now, pay later was invented in Australia. We're the global leader of that, and we should be incredibly proud of it. We're inventing something that hasn't been done before. So I'm sure there's some people in Silicon Valley looking at us and our peers and be like, oh, I want to learn that.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. And so the journey so far, almost a couple of years in, what have been some of the biggest obstacles you've had to overcome during that time?
I think it's education to our vendors. It's a new product to our consumers and also to regulators in understanding the benefits of buy now, pay later and how it serves its purpose in the financial ecosystem in Australia. I think that education would be our biggest obstacle. And I think to say the cliche answer, COVID was also a huge obstacle where at one point our solar vendors couldn't install solar panels on the roof.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting one because you are, creating almost a new category, and that education must be critical because I think people are naturally a little bit skeptical, right? So when they see 0% finance or buy now, pay later, there's probably other thoughts going on in their head as to what's the catch, what's the catch here? So does that come back to your content marketing, or how have you overcome that through your marketing?
Yeah. I'll be completely honest. I don't think we fully climbed that hill. I think we're still working through it, but it's through being honest and transparent, education, and using data. There was a current asset report that came out that showed that less like 0.1, 0.2% of our revenue comes from missed payments. 3% comes from other fees. It all comes from merchant fees. And if people ask, well, why would a merchant pay that? I'm like, well, ask one of your tradie friends how hard it is to follow up on their invoicing. And if that's what they want to do, and if people get it, but it's very much education. And I think you're right. It's building out that content marketing piece to make sure people understand the benefits of buy now, pay later and Brighte.
Yeah. And with that design and audience research and insights team, do they do a lot of that kind of user research with both sides of the market, so with consumers and your tradies? And how do they go about that?
Oh, it's multiple ways. We have a highly personal relationship with our vendors, so we call them. I call most of our big vendors at least once a quarter. We do surveys. We use panels. But being a digital first company, we have the luxury of actually looking at our own data and analyzing the behavior of customers.
And what have been the greatest results, do you think, so far that have come from the transformation and your time there? You've obviously grown the team from 2 to 22. The company's undergone significant growth during that time and since its inception. But what are you most proud of over the past couple of years?
I think I'm most proud that the team feels empowered. They feel empowered to speak up. They know their purpose in the company. Their personal development plan is aligned to the initiatives they're working on, and they can see how they're part of this growth trajectory. And I think that's incredibly powerful, and I'm incredibly proud of that.
And in current times, when a lot of companies are in decline or not undergoing growth, it must be encouraging, for the team to be at a company that is on a growth path and when they have so many development opportunities and it has such a rich culture. So exciting times. And what are you most excited about for the future then?
Oh, I think it's cementing Brighte becoming a trusted household brand.
Yeah. Nice challenge to follow up on. Well, Malini, that brings us to the end of, I guess, the formal part of the interview. Are you ready for the Fast Five?
I am. Bring it on.
Okay. So what do you believe are the 3 essential capabilities or criteria of a high-performance team?
Tenacity, creativity, and accountability.
TAC. And how would you describe your marketing team's culture in one word?
Kind.
Kind. I like that. I haven't had that one yet. I like it. What is one metric that you've successfully used to track and measure team performance?
OKRs.
What's one skill or capability you've learned recently that you wish you'd developed sooner in your career?
Listening with emptiness.
Oh, with emptiness. Yeah. So without judgments or thinking what you're going to say next. Just.
Yeah.
And what book or books have you read that you found yourself recommending to others or that you think our audience would gain value from?
Well, this might be a bit controversial, but I actually don't like business books. I like reading fiction. I like reading historical novels. So my suggestion would be to read something about a culture, a topic, a person you don't know anything about, and broaden your horizons.
Yeah, love it. Excellent. Well, Malini, fascinating conversation. I've loved learning more about your journey, the journey of Brighte and the culture that is being built there, and how you're developing the team, how you've grown the team, and the results you've had. Obviously, a lot to be proud of and a lot to be excited about into the future. So thank you for joining me on the Lean Mean Marketing Teams podcast.
Excellent. And thank you for your time and your great questions.
You're welcome. Hello again, Ty here. Just in case you're wondering, I totally forgot to ask Malini where to send people, so I'm going to let you know here. If you want to learn more about Brighte, head to Brighte with an E, brighte.com to learn more about their really interesting business model. And if you want to learn more about Malini, then you can look her up on LinkedIn. Her spelling is Malini, Malini Sietaram, which is Sietaram, and just mention you heard her on the podcast. Of course, I'll have all that in the show notes as well. Thank you.
You've been listening to Lean Mean Marketing Teams with Ty Hayes. If you love the show, please remember to hit subscribe so that you can discover more tips and strategies to build a high-performance marketing team. And if you're feeling generous, please tell someone about the show who you think would benefit. We're on a mission to help CMOs build their dream team and enable marketers to do their best work. And we appreciate your help in spreading the word.